Well, good morning, and welcome to this week's episode of Wisdom of the Soul, presented by the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. I'm Michael Benner, and absolutely thrilled to be with you today. We're going to tackle a difficult topic today. I'm a little intimidated by the whole idea of addressing it, but there are some real important points that we're going to make about the nature of truth. What is truth? Capital T truth, small t truth, objective versus subjective truth, absolute versus relative truth, um, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then there's deliberate lying. I think that's where we should begin, to bear false witness, um, to lie. And there's different kinds of lies. You know, there's gray lies, white lies, lies of omission. That's a lie, when you just don't tell the whole truth. But there's a metaphysical truth that goes beyond all of this. And that's where we're pointed, and that's where we're headed. The truth that you really initially have to take on faith. It's odd. It's like, instead of looking for evidence or proof or a factual basis to decide upon truth, metaphysical truth works the other way. You really have to take it on faith. And then you're able to experience whether it's true for you or not. So we'll sort of contrast metaphysical truth to the truth of the physical world. That's just a little bit of what we'll touch on today. So I'll do my best to make it fun and relevant, most importantly, practical, so that you can use it in your daily life and affairs and be more discerning and more critical in our thinking. We've done, as I recall, one class on critical thinking, and classes like this in metaphysics or mysticism or esoteric philosophy often don't focus on logic or analysis or reasoning, but it's just as important as developing intuition and then learning to integrate the two, your logic and your intuition. So that's a little of what we have in store for us today. We'll begin, as always, with a group meditation. So if you get comfortable in your chairs or on your meditation pillow or the sofa. I was thinking the other day, we used to call our sofa a Davenport. Does anybody know that word? Do people use that word, or is that just my Michigan background? Or maybe you're on a bed, whatever. It's okay to lay down when you meditate, but you're likely to go to sleep. Uh, Sitting up, I think, is a good idea. And again, we don't want to be rigid. The idea is to be relaxed. So when you sit up for meditation, you want to experience yourself as balanced and centered. Balanced and centered. So let your shoulders fall back, open up the rib cage. You may want to lift your chin just a very little bit and get a sense of being centered. You know, the spine right above the hips, and allow the chair to support you. I say this at the beginning of every meditation. Allow the chair or the pillow or, again, whatever furniture you're sitting upon to support you. And that may sound like, why would I have to say that? It's important to begin by grounding yourself. It's just like any electrical circuit really needs a ground, a return path, because energy always moves in circuits or cycles. That's why you look at the electrical outlet in your home, there's two wires. It has to be two wires. You can't just receive power. You got to send it back. Everything's cyclic, goes round and round. just as our breath, the in and out of breathing, is really around and around. So feel yourself connected through the furniture, through your buttocks and the back of your thighs, through your feet flat on the floor if you're sitting in a regular chair. And think of how a tree might feel to be so deeply and securely rooted into the earth. And how not only in a sense of being electrically grounded, but also in a sense of, this is my spot, that I belong here, this is where I grow, that kind of thing. And then once grounded, you can stand open and receptive at the top of your head, as if the energy or the spirit meaning breath, the energy that illumines and animates us, as if it precipitates down like a gentle rain. And so you're the middle element between the earth and the sky, between the polarities of matter and energy, of matter or mass and energy. What a spiritual person or a philosopher would call spirit and matter, or heaven and earth. These are polarities, you see. And we're like the battery in the center. We're both spirit and matter. We're spiritual beings in material bodies. We stand in the center. We are both energy and mass. The idea of relaxing into a meditation, physically releasing tension, pressure, creating and sensing a letting go feeling, is to lower your resistance, don't you see? To become a path of least resistance, open and receptive, so that, like a battery being recharged, you can feel these energies from sky and earth commingling, even if you just say to yourself, well, I'm pretending, I'm imagining. The feeling you're making it up is exactly the right feeling. A friend of mine often reminds me that we have to pretend before we tend to do anything. It's very difficult to do things you cannot imagine. So imagine it. Image, picture it, however it occurs to you, and feel yourself being recharged and restored by letting go, not by an effort, not by trying, but by a deep letting go from head to toe. Spot check the major muscle groups. Feel the letting go in your thighs, in your belly, in your abdomen, across your rib cage, your shoulders and neck. Curiously, you can even feel the space around your ears sag or droop a little bit when you allow your scalp to relax. And in the same way, your forehead and your whole face. Your eyes are closed. Your eyelids are relaxed. Relax your cheeks and your jaw. Pause on the jaw. and the tongue. Remind yourself there's no need for you to speak in the next few minutes. So create and sense that feeling of relaxation all around your head, scalp, face. Feel it in the neck and shoulders, running down your body like warm water in the shower, through your arms to the tips of your fingers and thumbs. Relaxation like a gentle warmth flowing down through the very center, the core of your being, through your hips and into your legs, down to your feet and into the earth. Deep letting go. Reminding yourself that in fact you're very safe and that it's okay to relax deeply. Take a couple of slow, deep breaths, pulling in strength as you inhale. After a short pause at the peak, exhale slowly, just as slowly, through the nose or the mouth. And feel yourself deflating, feel the letting go. Do that a couple of more times, inhaling ideally through the nose. Bring in the strength of breath, hold for just a beat as you peak. And exhale just as slowly through the nose or the mouth, all the way beyond where you'd normally stop, all the way out. Maybe 2 more times. Nice, big, slow, deep, relaxing breath. Feel the letting go. Settling in. Relaxing. Take a little vacation. This is for you. Just a few minutes. Just for you. To put it all down. Give yourself permission to put it all down. We're not only letting go of muscular tension, we're letting go of our worries and our doubts, of our efforts, of our presumptions and assumptions. The perception that we need to always judge and always beware. Put it down just for a few minutes. Let it go. And notice that you remain. You continue to exist, allowing your body to breathe itself, all by itself. You gently put your awareness somewhere near the bottom of your nose. Find your place. Find a spot to rest your attention. A fixed point that you settle into. And watch your body breathing itself naturally and normally. All by itself. and identify as the one who watches. Remind yourself, I am not the breather, but the witness, the observer of my body being breathed for me. It feels like taking a step back, and still your body breathes all by itself. Or gently rising above to a slightly elevated perspective, non-attached, no clutching, no holding on, no grasping, no labeling, no judgment. Simply a curiosity, even a fascination, that your body is being breathed on your behalf, freeing you to be the observer. And from this place, consider how much of your life is managed unnecessarily, micro-managed, as if your whole life would fall to pieces if you didn't keep working and struggling and making decisions and solving problems and anticipating this and considering that, reviewing the past, anticipating the future. And instead, here is a practice of sitting in the present moment, of recognizing the infinite and the internal, the infinite and the eternal, unfolding in each breath, in each passing moment, new again, born again. Sense the freshness, the newness, and the regeneration available as now unfolds on its own, without any effort, on your part whatsoever. The pathless path, as if there were no place to go, as if everywhere you go, you find yourself right here, right now. There's nothing to attain or accomplish. For life grows, it evolves on its own. It continues to improve itself and refine itself and repair and replace itself without any effort on our part at all. And while there are times, indeed, the bulk of our waking day, that we need to focus out into the world, manage our lives with a sense of attainment, accomplishment, problem solving, decision making. There are also times when we take 10, 15, 20 minutes to practice sitting quietly, identifying merely as the observer of an eternally unfolding presence, and nothing you need to do about it. Nothing you need to do, but simply be. And the truth is, in these states, your body heals itself at an accelerated rate. Problems are solved at unconscious levels. Good ideas follow. Insight and understanding blossoms and enlightens us as we return to the wide awake state and go about our day. Again, a kind of a middle way between the unconsciousness of sleep, deep non-dream sleep, and the scattered consciousness of the busy, 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 wide awake state. You sit between the two, most aware, more aware than either state, more conscious, witnessing, witnessing the truth of things, seeking to embody the truth. Bring these wonderful feelings of peace and happiness, relaxation, effortlessness, even the warmth and contentment. Just form the intention. Know that without effort, you bring this with you to the wide awake state. In 3 simple steps, simply, number 1, form the intention to bring yourself back to the wide awake state. 2 is the transition. You feel yourself slowly awakening, rising up. It feels like a floating upward. And then 3 is eyes open, wide awake, back in the room now, wide awake, eyes open, feeling better than before, feeling much better than before, more awake, feeling fine, feeling fine. Good. Welcome back. All right, let's start our discussion of what is truth with what is not truth. And we've had some recent events that bring this to mind. If you're following the news at all, there was a lawsuit filed against Fox News that resulted in some depositions and the release of confidential emails that demonstrated that Fox has a business model of earning money, generating revenue, and also increasing their stock market value by giving people what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. It's a business model. And it's called Fox News, but it's not Fox News. There's no news. I guess you could say Fox News is is not real journalism. And the most popular hosts will admit to you that they're not journalists. But now we see them in these private emails admitting to each other that their support of the big lie about the last general election was just that. And they were scheming and conniving and mocking the guests that they were featuring and saying that they were lying, and they had to lie. And in one case, one of the reporters accidentally told the truth, and it was basically the big three: Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, but there's many, many others. And they said, we got to get this woman out of here. Can't we get her fired? She's doing damage to the business model. The stock price is down. She told the truth, that there's no evidence here, that this is all nonsense. You remember these QAnon things about bamboo fiber in the ballots, and something about Italian satellites, and the Dominion, the voting machine company, was really owned by some communist in Venezuela, second cousin to the... It's just absurd. And we find out that the primary source for all of this, according to the attorney Sidney Powell, was a woman who claimed that she knew that this was all true, the election was a fraud, because she was able to time travel in a semi-conscious state. That was their source. I cannot imagine, having graduated with a degree in journalism, quoting or giving attribution to a woman who said, I know because I time travel in a semi-conscious state. But it didn't matter because they were making millions personally, paid tens of millions, $20 million a year, personal income. The company making billions. And to this day, continuing, even though they've been exposed. These are deliberate lies. And since we're interested in metaphysics and the whole idea of karma, and even Moses included in the Ten Commandments that he was inspired to jot down or scratch into a tablet, an injunction against bearing false witness. Elsewhere in the Bible, it says the devil is a liar. What makes something evil? Well, lying is a good place to begin. A deliberate, purposeful lie, not to mention a lie that undermines democracy and promotes autocracy and corporatocracy. I don't know how you sleep, but I would worry about the karma, because the universe is righteous. It's just. It's not vengeful. I heard Trump this morning at CPAC say that I am your retribution. We're not interested in retribution or vengeance. These matters will be handled by the nature of the universe, which is ultimately just. So there's horrible karma in lying. I won't dwell on it, but there are situations where white lies could arguably be promoted if the intention is to avoid hurting someone. But you have to be really careful about justifying lies, even though it's difficult sometimes to tell the truth, to someone you love, to your partner, to your parents, to your children, uh, at work, to the boss, to your coworkers, to the people who work for you. There are better ways of framing something than just blatantly hurting people with the truth. Even if it's true, we can find ways of being diplomatic and broaching it. But that's got to be our goal. In time, all truth shall be revealed. Truth always reveals itself. What was that quotation by Buddha that I put in the newsletter this week? Three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. It'll always come out. I remember saying once to a person in my life who was indeed a pathological liar, I said, you know, people who tell the truth have a way of knowing when someone is lying. And without hesitating, he said, really, how? I had to laugh because, well, of course, you would never know. You'll never figure that out because you're so busy manipulating. And pathological liars are people with personality disorders that cause them to lie a lot, are people who are under the impression that everybody does it, that the goal is to be a better liar, to be the best liar ever, and just to be confident and certain in your lies. But it never works. I also like that that quote about, I don't know if it's Churchill or Mark Twain, that said, a lie will get halfway around the world before the truth can get its pants on. It's true. Lies are sticky. Anything negative is sticky. And people are really amenable to believing what they want to believe. You know, confirmation bias and all of that. So, to tell the truth is really a virtue. It's a matter of character. And it is not something that we merely do for others. We benefit because truth includes the understanding. I'm sort of jumping to the end here, and then I'll come back and backfill. Truth, capital T truth, exposes the illusion of separation. So there is no you or me. It's always you and me. It's always us and them. There is no us or them. There is no or. There's just the one thing. All things, seemingly separate, flow from the one thing, and that's the ultimate metaphysical truth. There's just one of us here, don't you see? When we talked about the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism, which constitutes the fourth noble truth, Buddhism begins with four noble truths. And the fourth is this how-to of the Eightfold Noble Path. Remember, it begins with right understanding. That's the first of 8 steps in the fourth noble truth. Right understanding is that there's just one thing here, one life, one thing. Ancient Egyptians called it one thing, the one thing. It's just, there's only one, capital O and E. One is just one thing at work. And unlike Abrahamic or monotheistic religion, which is very dualistic. There's the creator and the creation, and the creator lives outside the creation. In monism, as opposed to monotheism, the monism of the East, this is a bizarre belief. Why would you separate the creator from its creation? The subject-object split is a real conundrum to half of the people in the world, at least. I'm not sure the numbers. How many are monotheists versus monists? The monist does not see separation. Its philosophy, whether practiced as a religion or simply a philosophy, is non-dual, such that the creator and its creation are not separate, but the same thing. It's like in Eastern philosophy, God did not create the world. God is the world, and the world is God. Divinity is in everything, and everything is in the one. And listen to atheists argue with theists or religious people. It's all based on, does God exist as this super being, as this big daddy, this divine father aspect, or the divine trinity, if you will. But it's full of all of this separation. And prayer is a petition in most cases to this external loving force. No separation in monism. And so when you discuss truth in that context, it becomes a very different thing. That's truly capitalized. Now let's backfill and work our way up to that. And again, it's my sincere wish that you participate to some extent in the Q&A coming up with just a comment or a simple question, and you can put it in the chat box and Melinda will read it, and you don't need to turn your camera on or even open up your microphone unless you wish. We'll give you that opportunity, but give me something to work with. Give me some feedback. That's why we do this live. Plus the meditation. You can feel the energy of the group in the meditation, I think. So we talked about the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Let's talk about subjective truth and objective truth. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One that I like a lot is to imagine a ball that is half orange and half green, a big, like a beach ball. And one side of that ball is orange and the other side of the ball is green. And there's two people on either side of the ball, and one person sees the orange side only and declares that the truth is that the ball is orange. On the other side, we have a person that observes only the green and is just as certain that it's green. And each presumes that the other one must be lying. It's so obvious. It's right in front of my face. This is an orange ball. And the other one is incredulous. How can you say that? You think I'm a fool? It's clearly a green ball. Well, one of them must be lying. And that's as far as most people ever get in their lives. That's it. That's Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, men and women in a marriage when they argue. Again, our arguments with our parents and our children and our neighbors, and we're both certain of our reality. How could they possibly disagree with what's so obvious to us? And it's just that we've never been trained to understand that it's quite likely that two things could be very different and both be true. And you'll hear people argue to this day that that cannot be. Something either is true or it is not true. It's absolute. There's no relativity to it at all. But wait, there's a third person here. A person who sits at right angles to the other two and can clearly see that the ball is both orange and green. But what if there's a fourth person and they're at a distance and they have a perspective that stands above and beyond the first three? Not only do they see that the ball is half orange and half green, but they see that a yellow light is shining on the ball and it's actually red and blue. You're all wrong. And if there's no light, the ball doesn't even exist, right? What ball? There's no ball. I don't see a ball. There's no light reflecting off it, so it must not be there. The great Rhineland mystic Johannes Tauler said in about the 14th century, I think, if I were a king and did not know it, I would not be a king. So awareness underlies all of this. So we have the idea of a objective truth and a subjective truth. And there's also an absolute truth and a relative truth that are very, very similar. This is where we talk about truth to a matter of degree. Wow. I'll give you some examples. Wow. That was really fast. That went quickly. Well, to what degree? Are we talking about time? Are we talking about speed? Are we talking about faster than a speeding bullet? Or faster than the speed of light? Or faster than the speed of sound? Or the rabbit being faster than the tortoise? Even if the tortoise wins in the long run. How fast is a relative term, right? How big is big? When does big become small? At what point does big become small? Well, it's all relative. It's relatively pretty big. Big as a house, big as a whale, big like that inside toe, the big toe. Is there really such a thing as jumbo shrimp? And when we say it's a matter of degree, this goes for temperature as well. A little play on words here. The example I use in my book, Fearless Intelligence, is a story about my friend Joe from Alaska and my friend Pakello from Hawaii, who come to visit me in Los Angeles, and it's 68 degrees. And Joe's loving it. Oh man, I'm so happy to be in Southern California. Do you realize it's 68 degrees in the middle of winter? You know what it's like in Alaska right now? My goodness. You mind if I go sit outside in my shirt sleeves and soak up this warmth? And in the same room, my friend from Hawaii is asking for a sweater. He's freezing. And he says, I don't know how you mainlanders, you howlies, suffer through these freezing temperatures, 68 degrees. My God, I can't remember the last time I felt such a cold, cold temperature. Well, the way most people think, one of these people is a liar. Or at the very least, one of them is wrong. It can't be both hot and cold at the same time. Yeah, it can. It's all a matter of degree. This is subjective truth. The objective truth is that it's 68 degrees. right? And if we were working with centigrade, if you're elsewhere in the world, Americans, I apologize, we're stuck on the Fahrenheit scale, so I'm not sure what that would be, centigrade or Celsius. But all I know about centigrade is that 40 is very hot. That's as much as I know. Uh, I think 40 is the equivalent of about 105, which is common where I live out in the desert in the summer. And this is also relative truth versus absolute truth. We could say it the same way in this case. There are some distinctions, but I'm not going to get into it today. It's just gets too esoteric. And, if you roll up your sleeves and do some research, wade into the philosophy around what is truth, it gets really pithy, really deep, and really profound. And I have no desire to go any deeper than we've gone, other than to say, beware of the absolutists in your life and recognize what a threat you are if you're an intelligent thinker and feeler, for that matter, who recognizes the relative nature of truth. See? Coffee is good for you. I know that to be true because I drink coffee, and I've read a bunch of studies that says coffee is really good for you. Somebody over here says, no, you're wrong. Coffee's bad for you. I know because I used to drink coffee and I stopped. And it took me a while to feel better, but then I felt a lot better. Can't tell you how much anxiety went away. And I've read some studies. There's a bunch of studies that says coffee is not good for you. Well, who's lying? Or maybe better said, who's right and who's wrong? There are very few people in our lives, unfortunately, who have the capacity or the willingness to say, well, maybe both things are true. Maybe they're both true 50-50. Maybe they're both equally true, and maybe they're both true to a relative degree. Maybe the guy who believes that coffee is good for you is 60% right, and the guy who believes coffee is not good for you is only 40% right. Then we can argue about, well, it's really 90-10 or it's 55-45. The debate is still raging, but at least we could agree that both things could be relatively true or subjectively true. Maybe coffee is good for this set of people and not so good for that set of people. And if you have people in your lives that are this flexible, embrace them, because they're a rare breed. It's likely you will encounter a great number of people, or already have, and will continue to encounter people who are terrified by the relative and by the subjective. And they are not interested in living in a society that honors relativism. They want absolute truth. They want rules. They want regulations. They want things to be clear cut. This is right. This is wrong. This is illegal. This should not be legal. Whether it's pot smoking or a woman's right to an abortion or gun ownership or a million other things that we disagree on. Can we agree to disagree as a place to begin and understand the subjective or relative nature of truth? Because only then can we begin to look for the absolute truth that may exist behind it. I contend there are both. There is an absolute truth, but it's esoteric. And again, this takes me back to the metaphysical truth. Everything we've talked about up until now, let's call physical truth, the truth of the world, of physical reality, our belief that we are physical bodies in a physical world. Increasingly, scientists, empirical scientists. This brings up a point that I'm glad I remembered to touch on. There is the self-defined truth of math and the scientific method that we need to acknowledge. 2 + 2 = 4 is neither a relative or a subjective truth. It's a self-defined truth. But it's reliable. When you look at the ability of science to do what it's able to do, whether it's medicine, healthcare, biology, engineering, laws of motion, physics. My God, the ability to build a rocket, to launch it at just the right time, given the fact that the planets are spinning around the sun, always moving in somewhat elliptical orbits. They're not even round orbits, which means they're speeding up as they get closer to the sun and slowing down as they get farther away from the sun. And I'm going to shoot a rocket to Pluto with a camera on it and send pictures back to Earth of the surface of Pluto. And it works. And in order to get that far, they had to slingshot the rocket around Jupiter, or maybe it was Saturn, where you aim the you aim the rocket at one of these big giants or at a point in space where that big planet will be when it arrives, at just the right angle that it falls into an orbit and then slingshots around it and then is thrown back out into space at a point that by the time it gets there will perfectly encounter Pluto and fly 100 miles above the surface. It's just breathtakingly amazing that mathematics and geometry and trigonometry and calculus can allow us to do such things. So there is truth in math, there is truth in science. But again, something is true only until it's not true, right? As you get more information, your truth is going to evolve. You get a better understanding of things. Even in science, things that we thought were true. It's not that what we once thought was true is now untrue. It's as we grow and evolve and expand our understanding, truth expands and puts what we had thought to be the whole truth in a whole new perspective, and we realize that that's only part of the truth. Often, if you're really clever about it, you can witness people who you might say, without carefully thinking about it, well, you're wrong. This is actually the truth. And I know it's the truth. I can demonstrate it to you. How often is it that they're not really wrong, it's just their truth is incomplete? We're back to that oath in the courtroom of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We don't always know the whole truth. So a truth can be true, but not be the whole truth, and nobody really knows the whole truth yet, so truth evolves. And the argument is then, well, how could it be true if it's changing? If it's evolving and growing and expanding, then it's really not true. It is in a relative or subjective way, it's true. This is one uh, really helpful insight to understanding the reactionaries among us, reflexive thinkers, if you will. They are very anxious, uh, dominated by what they don't know, frightened by what they don't understand, and looking for absolutes to hold on to. And ironically, and I'm using that word deliberately, ironically, when truth, capital T, metaphysical truth is discovered, along with it is the recognition that there's nothing to hold on to, no reason to hold on, that you're best letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. Maybe the ultimate wisdom, truth is letting go. In the sense, truth is love, truth is consciousness. It's the oneness of all things, so there's nothing to hold on to. You would only hold on, grasping, clutching, the desire for absolute truth to hang your hat on, if you felt that you lived in a universe where everything was separate. If everything is separate, how did everybody get COVID? How did it swing like a monkey through the trees, through the one body that is humanity? And it's actually a form of bird flu, so it's in the animals too. Birds and bats, and I mean, even if it was a lab leak, we don't know, or came from bats. There's bird flu. You've seen the price of chicken eggs, right? It's because there's a bird flu right now. It's killing all the chickens. Well, not all the chickens, but you understand what I'm saying. An understanding of ecology, of the ecosystem, of the environment, leads to an understanding, a very clear understanding at some point, that everything touches everything. We talked a week or two ago about how antidepressants and, for that matter, antibiotics are in the rainfall. They've so completely saturated the ecosystem that pharmaceuticals rain down out of the sky and come out of the tap in the shower head. There is just one thing here. That's the ultimate truth. That's the what I'm calling the metaphysical truth, the truth of mysticism. It's the ultimate mystery. There's only one of us here. There's only one thing at work. It's a universe. Separation is an illusion. So in many systems of study, theosophy, for example, and the related schools, anthroposophy, Neoplatonism, the Eastern religions, and mysticism in general, love truth is often hyphenated as a single word. In the same way, loving kindness, the Sanskrit word metta is loving kindness. You'll often see it hyphenated. In fact, increasingly, it's not even hyphenated. It's one word, loving kindness. Two sides of the same coin. See? And so love truth is really one concept. But you've got to understand when we talk about truth as love, that we're not talking about love as an emotion. Get ready. We're going to go to the questions in just a couple of minutes here, or comments. Love is not an emotion. Even your straight-laced psychologist, psychiatrist, will admit that it may seem like it ought to be, but love is not an emotion. It's not just some warm affinity. That is more of a biological drive. And the proof is that love brings up all kinds of feelings. Love can bring up that warm, fuzzy desire to be present, to touch, to hold, to laugh with, to cry with, to grieve with. Our connection to people, to animals, to a flower, to a sunset, to life itself. But as an emotion, if you think of love as an emotion, it's confounding because it brings up not only happiness and joy, but it brings up anger and bitterness and jealousy and envy and hostility and sometimes violence. You know, why did OJ kill his wife? Because he loved her. What? Yeah, that's how crazy it is. So we have to look at love as in a metaphysical sense, not merely in an emotional sense. And for love to be hyphenated with truth is that the ultimate truth is love. And what love means is no separation. Love is the awareness, the consciousness. You're looking for a synonym for love. It's awareness or consciousness that binds all apparently separate things into one, such that everything is part of the one, while the one is in every seemingly separated thing. And both things are true. We're back to that. Two different things both being true. Two sides of the coin, right? Why is a single set of trousers called a pair of pants? Where's the pair in a pair of glasses or a pair of gloves? Aren't they really one thing? Your glasses, aren't they really one thing? But we call them a pair. All appearance of dualism is an illusion. Right? I know it looks like two genders, right? Yin and a yang. There's light and shadow. There's good and evil. There's heaven and earth, spirit and matter, energy and mass, coming and going, in and out, up and down, back and forth, good and bad. Did I say that already? That's the dualism of the world. It's an illusion. Love, truth is it's all one. But relatively, that's the absolute, but relatively, separation is real. I used to ask my students and clients, why does the Dalai Lama, if the Dalai Lama knows time is an illusion, why does he wear a Rolex? Because it's real enough. And he's got a scheduler. He's probably got a person who does it for him, but there's a schedule that a week from Friday at 3 in the afternoon, he's got a very important meeting. And when that meeting arrives, he knows it'll still be now. He understands time is a function of three dimensions of space. It's a continuum, space-time continuum. Where there is no three-dimensional space, there is no time. Where there is no time, there is no space. At the speed of light, time stands still.
Michael, we have 3 interesting questions, by the way, in comments.
I'm ready to go.
Okay. Ignacio is first, if he'd please unmute, or if you want me to read it, but you go ahead if you don't mind, Ignacio. I can cover it for him. He says, Truth is based on reality, and how much we live in truth depends on our ability to accept reality as it is, despite our wishes, wants, and desires. I would add that's the tricky part. Thanks, Ignacio.
Yeah, small r reality or capital R reality. Small r reality is what we've all been conditioned to believe, and as I was just saying, is real enough. That where I live and where I'm 120 miles outside Los Angeles. In small r reality, those are not the same place. I have to get in a car, a bus, a train, an airplane. Suppose I could bicycle there, but think those days are over. But that distance is real. In small r reality, there is space, there is time. We live in the space-time continuum, but it's an illusion of our senses and our sensations. Everything that we, quote, know to be true is filtered through senses. Animals can hear things we don't hear. To us, it's not real. To the animal, it's what was that? Or I watch my cats discover new things. You bring anything new in the house, my cats are on it. What does that mean? Do they look at it? For sure. But they smell it. What do they smell? I don't smell what they smell. But think of a
It's so
hound
true.
dog. Think of a hound dog. A guy can run through the woods, and 2 days later, he doesn't do anything. He just runs with shoes through the woods, and 2 days later, a dog can pick up that scent. Then capital R reality is that there's something beyond this capsule, this physical, dense universe of time and space, where that all collapses into one thing. That's all. And that's very difficult for people. And that's why we have classes like this, to stretch our brains and open our hearts and try to touch that and then live in that with harmony and kindness and compassion and mercy, forgiveness, and those virtues. So that's my comment about reality, so-called. There's capital R reality, and then the much more obvious small r reality.
Thank you, Mike. Jeffrey has a comment that I'm going to read, or a couple parts to it. He says, key to our projection of truth is A, my current primary sense of identity, i.e. who, what am I really, question mark, and B, what is my current hierarchy of life values, i.e. have I placed truth awareness much higher in my hierarchy of values when compared to my valuation of temporal, quote, mammon, or worldly ego-based comforts, values, wealth, status, etc., whereas there are many persons who hold societally programmed worship of ego slash mammonomic values far ahead of their valuation of truth awareness. He said,
Yeah. Well, of course, because they believe, and why wouldn't they? That's the way we've been educated and enculturated, in particular in the West, to it's sort of like, I'm from Missouri. I've got to see it to believe it. I got to be able to touch it. It's not real if I can't get a grip on it. If I can't see it, hear it, taste it, smell it, or touch it, right? And then there was radio. All of a sudden, there was wireless communication. At first, it was just telegraphy, and later it was voice. And soon after that, it was pictures through the air, made up of pixels, little dots that formed lines. And the scanned lines happened fast enough that we saw a TV in the late 40s, late 1940s, invisibly through the air. And pretty quickly you realize that you look at the TV that those images are not inside the box. They're coming from elsewhere, but they're invisible. The majority of matter, physical matter in this universe, cannot be detected by human beings or any machinery or technology that we know of, so-called dark matter. It's somewhere between 80 and 90% of the physically dense matter in the universe, and we have no ability to perceive it. We only know it exists because gravity acts upon it. It behaves according to the laws of gravity, which is really not a force. Gravity is a bending of space. I don't want to get that far off topic, but the nature of what gravity is. Imagine holding a sheet. 4 people stand at each corner of a sheet and hold the sheet, the bed sheet taut, and you put a bowling ball in the middle of that sheet. Can you imagine the sheet sinking? Now, if I spin a marble around the outside of that, it's going to spiral in to the bowling ball in the center of the sheet. And you say, well, yeah, of course, that's because the surface of the sheet is pulling it in. That's what gravity is. That's how gravity works. It's not some electromagnetic force. It's a bending of space. And again, but this is still the relative truth. What if there is something beyond that? Physicists increasingly, the empirical, mathematical, hardcore empiricists increasingly are admitting that the old mystics are right. That all of this that we think of as real and solid is merely a function of sense and sensation, that our eyes and our ears, these other senses, are perceiving tiny little slivers of reality. And then, as the questioner or commenter was saying, do I limit my values and my sense of being to that? Well, I think not. Otherwise, we all end up being selfish, self-centered. What's in it for me? You're a sucker, you're a loser. That kind of stuff, you know. It's only when you consider the idea that there's more going on here and that it can be experienced mystically in revelation and inspiration, in these altered states of expanded awareness, of heightened sensitivity. You get these insights, these revelations. Psychedelics can do the same thing, by the way, by opening the tendency of the brain to limit or shut down consciousness. And then it all makes sense. You begin to understand it, and you don't lose that understanding. You don't lose that awareness, and that causes your values to shift. Now I'm less interested in me than the mutual benefit of all concerned, because I am you and you are me. And if I hurt someone else, I end up hurting me. And now karma makes sense. And now you reap what you sow makes sense. And thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That starts making sense. Knock on the door shall be opened, ask and you shall receive. Suddenly all this stuff falls into place. And that's my whole goal with this episodic class, Wisdom of the Soul, is not to tell you how it is, but to create shifts in your awareness that you can begin to perceive what all the great mystics, the women and men of the world, have been trying to communicate to us. And it's a never-ending process. There is no there. You're not you're not ever going to get to a place where you fully understand it, where you've figured it out. You just get to increasingly elevated points of view where you ask better and better questions. That's what's so fun about it. It just never ends. So that's my comment on that. Did this person want to unmute? Who is it that we're hearing from here, Mindy?
Well, actually, next is Jack.
All right, let's go to Jack.
Jack has a comment. You ready, Jack?
Yes. One of the places where we really see people that know the truth, absolutely, and yet and then are in conflict with each other is religion. So much so that there are a lot of people that think religion should be done away with because you have, you know, so many examples of, in quote, religious conflict. And of course, when people have really live in different belief worlds, that could be very possible. I mean, in Islam, Muhammad is the last of the prophets, period. But for Christians, that doesn't even mean anything because they have the Messiah, and then the Jews already had the truth. So these things are just sort of fantasies added on, which aren't needed. So people with very different views historically have fought each other, but I contend that they fight each other more because they're kind of driven to it by people who are going to profit by the conflict. And there are plenty of opposing examples, such as I have a friend that had a neighbor that was from Syria and was commenting on the current Syrian conflict, and there's a tendency to look at it as often there was also in Iraq, of people with different religions sort of fighting with each other. But he said where he grew up, and he said this was actually very common, he was Muslim, but as a child, he would go to Jewish temples with the friends he went to school with, and they would come to his mosque, and they would all go to Christian churches, and the neighborhood was Christians and Jews and different Muslim traditions all living together. So they had different beliefs, and they had beliefs that would be, you know, if you want to argue about them, they're completely conflictual. But there was something else happening, and I think it's what you were talking about, that loving truth. Love was more important, and they lived by love. They loved each other. The kids in school, they loved each other, and the parents did the same, and it wasn't a problem. Yes, they had very different traditions, so in a way it's a sort of a richer community, but there was no problem. Religion was not a problem. I think you also see this a little bit more in, if you talk about in the theologies, when you talk about the mystics. Of course, the mystics often get in trouble with their own religions.
Yeah.
Because their theology gets a bit dicey. This is why in the Catholic Church, you can't become a saint until you're dead. And there's a reason for that, because if you're a saint while you're alive, you could cause trouble. Because the saints are often having these experiences, which often are much more about unity and often much less about these details that can be conflictual. So, I think what you're doing, and I think what we who kind of follow this tradition are doing, are more on the side that tends to be less conflictual, because we tend to look at the larger truths that unite us. But I also think we don't need to be afraid or disturbed by very different traditions or even belief systems that are a bit more narrow and potentially conflictual. As long as there's love, then we can at least tolerate each other, and not expect that everybody else should be I mean, I don't want everybody else to believe what I believe. I want everybody else to be like me. That would be really boring, if not annoying. I like it that people are different.
Yeah. Viva la difference. Well, the very idea of mysticism, this is the mystery school, mysticism, or to be a mystic, is pretty much a solo endeavor. And the mystic says, there is my incarnated self, there is an oversoul above and free of form that stands between the divine source, the oneness of all things, and my separated physical self. So there's sort of a Trinity. This is really the description of the Trinity. The Father aspect corresponds to the will of God or the Godhead. The Son or the Christ, the Christos, is the love aspect, the love of God. That's the soul, that's the love in the center, the consciousness. And then there is the material body of God, which is the physical universe. The church replaces the temple, the mosque, the church, at least in Abrahamic religions, monotheism, tends to replace or supplant that middle element, the soul. So that the only way that the human mortal being can know its immortal source is through the church. And so there are increasingly Protestant and Catholic churches where contemplation is not only respected, tolerated, but encouraged, but they are few in number. And mostly what the church is saying, whether it's a Protestant or Catholic, the Christian churches are saying, we are the authority. You must believe what we say, the way we say it. We're the boss. We're running the show. Do what you're told. We have the special magic. Only we can, on Christ's behalf, change wine to the blood of Christ and bread to the body of Christ. Transubstantiation, I think it's called. And if you're a good Catholic, you have to believe that. You have to really believe that that is the body and blood of Christ, which is a little vampire-y, a little zombie. It's a little weird, I think, for non-Christians when they learn about Christianity. You drink the blood and eat the bodies? What is this about? And most Christians couldn't really tell. Most Catholics couldn't really tell you. Nobody ever told me. I was raised Catholic, and I did catechism and all of that. Nobody even told me what the sign of the cross meant. Why do I touch my forehead, my brain, my thoughts, my mind in the name of the Father? Why do I touch my heart in the name of the Son of the Christ? What do my shoulders have to do with the Holy Spirit? Well, it's very symbolic, as I say. Our mental, emotional, and physical nature is a lower correspondence of that divine Trinity. Why don't they tell us that stuff? So the mystic is the liberal. The mystic is the progressive. The mystical is the lefty. And all these religions that you've mentioned, even the Eastern religions, the non-Abrahamic religions, the Hinduism, so-called, Buddhism, Taoism, the Jains, the Shinto, the Sikhs, they all have ultra-conservatives on the right, so to speak, and the mystic on the left. And so there's conflict within the religion that you've already referred to. And I guess what I really want to affirm and confirm is my agreement with you, Jack, that it's a good thing that we have diversity and that we avoid the snobbery that the mystic sometimes gets about you simple-minded religious zealots and your silly juvenile approach to spirituality. If only you knew what I knew. Religion plays a very important role, and if only as a stepping stone. Uh, you don't start at the university, you start in kindergarten and preschool, and you've got to go to grade school before you can qualify to go into junior high, and only then to high school. And then, if you've done a good job and you pass the tests, maybe you can get to university. And after that point, it's easy peasy. Master's degree, PhDs, nothing.
Michael, Larry has been waiting. He has a question too, just to let you know.
So let me make sure that I've concluded my thoughts. Just that it's beyond tolerance to embrace all of these religions, even if we see them as simple-minded, even if they are separative by their nature. Christianity, more than the other religions, tends to be intolerant. Islam embraces Judaism and Christianity. Eastern religions embrace all religions. I think it was the Dalai Lama that said that I love your Jesus. I love your Christianity. It's the Christians that concern me. And that's this my way or the highway, this self-righteous, sanctimonious, I'll pray for you because I have the Lord in my life and you don't because you disagree, even if only in minor areas. This is why this is, Catholics and Protestants warring in Ireland, for example, over who loves Jesus more or who loves Jesus the right way. So it's insane, this break in Christianity. And you see the same thing in the East. There's even warring Buddhists, as crazy as that sounds, and the Muslims and the Hindus and the Buddhists fighting wars with each other over. And you might think, well, anyway, there has to be more than just tolerance for people that disagree. We have to understand how this jigsaw puzzle, this Tetris game comes together and is necessary. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't necessary. So I appreciate your comments, Jack. Thanks.
Larry seems to touch on the heart of the matter with his comment. I have difficulty with the increasingly used term, quote, my truth, as a description of alternative facts.
Yeah, you want to expand on that, Larry?
Well, yeah, I mean, I talk to people and they say things like, the earth is flat, or there are aliens living among us, and that's my truth, and so they're using my truth as a replacement for the word my opinion or my belief, and I'm struggling with, I understand what you said earlier, and it was very good about subjective and objective truth, but sometimes, when it goes as far as, aliens and flat earth, I struggle with that, accepting it as their truth.
That's an excellent point. That's a very good point. That's absurd. That's like an inability to say, and I don't know. How about, I would like to believe that there are aliens. Look at the vastness of the universe. How could there not be life elsewhere? And then perhaps they're here. But I don't know. That's a quality of honesty and humility that would appear to be lacking in somebody that misuses subjective truth. Then 2 and 2 can equal 17. And the square root of 9 is 2. It's just absurd on the surface. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good point. It's just misuse of language. Words have meaning. They may have multiple meanings, but they're supposed to have an agreed upon syntax, and that's just misuse of the language, I think. That's not what my truth or subjective truth means. I'd like to believe, I want to believe, I sincerely believe, but I really don't know. Even the ultimate question, and this is a good place to conclude the class, does God exist? I saw a YouTube where this priest, this Catholic priest, who's got his own YouTube channel, is saying, look, either God exists or God does not exist. Both things cannot be true, and neither cannot be true. One has to be true, God exists, or God does not exist. And I thought, well, that's that's not true, because it depends on what you mean by God. God as a man on a cloud, as a super being, as in the Abrahamic monotheistic view, is very different from monism, where there's nothing that is not divine. God is everything, and everything is sacred. The snail and the slug and the snake and the hawk and the lion, the flower, the river, the sky, the interstellar gases are just as divine as the most holy person you know. Nothing exists outside. Well, that's very different. That's monism. That's a very different view. So you can't argue that absolute God either exists or doesn't if you haven't got a definition of God, and how could we? Because even words, even sentences are victims of the subject-object split. You have a subject, a verb, and an object. So just to say a sentence is to create an artificial split. And so we're limited by our language, let alone the definition of words. It's part of the conundrum. Hey, thanks everybody. What a great class. I knew when we sent out the email this was going to be a good topic, because I got a whole bunch of emails back before we even did the class. And I appreciate each and every one of you being here today and participating as you have. And tune in next week to see what I have up my sleeve. I'm not even sure what we'll do next week. I meditate on it during the week. So if we seem to jump around, so be it. I guess we're jumping around a little. I want you to unmute and say your hellos, howdy-doos, thank yous, farewells, and such to each other. And I express my appreciation. Namaste, Salam, Aloha, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Hallelujah.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I even got a
Except me.
hallelujah.
Michael and everyone, thank you. Amazing, very insightful conversation. Love this
Wonderful.
one.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
So I love hearing all those voices. Mindy, thank you.
Of course.
Michael, great conversation today. Thanks, Melinda.
Bye.
Bye.